What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of NeoVintage News. Now, for you guys who have never seen this show before, basically I go through the biggest stories that happened this past week, give you guys my quick thoughts, and at the end of the show, I kind of go over the games that I recommend you go check out. We have a new kind of segment that's going to happen on the latter half of the show, but once we get there, I'll explain it to you. So let's just get into the stories because we have a lot to unpack and get into this week. So let's just start with the New Games Plus Expo. So basically, we discussed this a few weeks back on the podcast, actually, and this is basically an online event for Japanese developers to announce their new products and give you different updates about games that perhaps were announced at a previous date already. So there was a lot of stuff that was announced and hinted at and talked about at this conference, but I'm going to give you guys kind of a rundown of everything, and then I'll stop on anything that is of relative interest to me, and I'll get into it from there. So let's go by pretty much developer at this point, or publisher. So we could start with NIS, and they discussed Trails of Cold Steel 4. I've heard a lot of great things about that franchise. So that's getting a new entry, Fallen Legion's Revenants, and then Ys 9 Monstrum Nox. That is a massive franchise in Japan, so that's a pretty big deal. Axis announced Tim and Kuna, Piafere and Cafe Enchante or something like that. These are two visual novels coming to Switch. Collar X Malice Unlimited, which I believe has something to do with Criminal Girls, that franchise. On the Vita, if you remember, that had an entry over there. Pretty Princess Party, that looked interesting. Escape from Asura. And then SNK announced Samurai Showdown Cross For Honor collab that's happening, so they're teaming up with Ubisoft to make that happen. That's pretty cool. The Samurai Showdown collection is coming. That really interests me. I really enjoy the early Samurai Showdown games, and it's actually, I guess, going to get a physical release by Limited Run Games, so that's pretty awesome. King of Fighters R2 is being ported. This is a series of the Neo Geo Pocket games that seem to be brought over to current gen consoles, so that's awesome. Spike Chunsoft gave us ReZero Starting Life in Another World, The Prophecy of the Throne. The Prophecy of the Throne. Now, this is an anime that I actually did watch, that I actually really enjoyed. I watched this a couple years back, I think. This may have been a 2017 or a 2018 anime, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're getting a kind of visual novel, it seems like, here that's going to continue some of the narrative threads that were set up in the anime. So for anybody who's into that, that's going to be awesome. Shiren the Wanderer, Tower of Fortune, and the Dice of Fate. So obviously, if you haven't gotten the gist already, this is a super weeb type conference, very Japanese oriented, super visual novel and JRPG type situation. So if these are not the games for you, this conference really had nothing for you, to be honest with you. Additionally, we got some new Catherine full body trailers. We got a No More Heroes 3 tease, which is pretty big. We saw Suda there, so that was awesome. Harvest Moon One World gameplay. Again, I have to make the note here. Harvest Moon One World. This is not the Harvest Moon that people really came to love. Again, that story is Seasons, and at this point, I believe the team is Natsume. They own the Harvest Moon name, and so they started making games, but they are by no means of the highest quality that you came to expect from the Harvest Moon franchise. So if you're looking for, hey, I grew up on Harvest Moon, I really love those games, I'm maybe playing Stardew Valley now, I'm looking for a new or a new Harvest Moon game, these aren't the games to check out. Go check out Story of Seasons. They had mostly 3DS entries, and now they're going to be transitioning into Switch. I don't know if they have a release date for when their next game is going to be, but yeah, Harvest Moon One World, these are not what you think or what you came up on. These are way more poor quality experiences, and I don't mean to crap on an upcoming project because I know there's people who work on these projects and put their all into it, but yeah, these are Harvest Moon in name only. Fight Crab trailer, which looks absolutely nuts. We got some more Fairy Tail details, which is an upcoming JRPG based on that hit shonen anime. And Billion Road sale of a game, Billion Road. Guilty Gear Strive gameplay. That game looks fantastic. I came up on Guilty Gear games playing it back on the PSP and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed it. This new game looks phenomenal, and so they dropped some new gameplay for that. Excited to get that. I don't know if I'm going to get it at launch, to be honest, because I'm always more hesitant to hop into fighters day one just because of the release schedule and the way they kind of segment big chunks of the cast now for additional pay things. I tend to just wait a year or two, let the complete version come out for half the price, and you get double the people in it. Yeah, I don't know. That's just how I consume it, but I understand people in the FGC, they like it day one, so shout out to them. And then the thing that I'm most excited about them announcing, which is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2. This is by Any Creates. So let me explain this to you guys. So if you saw the visual, this is obviously a game that is modeled predominantly over Castlevania 3. As you could see, I'm a massive Castlevania 3 fan. So anything in that style is right up my alley. This is a sequel to the 8-bit mini version that got kickstarted as an additional kind of throw-in from that massive Kickstarter that Bloodstained did. So this is not Bloodstained 2, Ritual of the Night 2. No, this is a sequel to the smaller title that came out before the big, side-scrolling Symphony of the Night style Bloodstained game that everybody played and seemed a lot of people to love. To be honest with you, in terms of my personal taste, I actually preferred Curse of the Moon over Ritual of the Night personally. So them announcing Curse of the Moon 2 is fantastic. That game looks so awesome, and Any Creates is just such an endlessly creative team, and they're just so talented over there. So I'm really excited to see what they do with the sequel here and what they play around with. They have some really cool different types of characters. They have like a soldier type character and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see what they do with it, and I'm really glad again this is getting a sequel. I'm sure the full Ritual of the Night will get a sequel as well, but I definitely like Curse of the Moon a lot better. It's a more compact experience, but in my opinion way more replayable, and it's just had really tight, beautiful gameplay. And I was just over the moon about that game, no pun intended. So I'm excited to see what they do with that. So I guess we can move on to the next story here. Let me get my assets ready. Okay, so Pokemon Unite. So the Pokemon Company announced Pokemon Unite, which is described as a strategic team-based battle game, and it's been announced. It's coming to Nintendo Switch and mobile devices with crossplay apparently, and will be released as a free-to-start game. So I'm imagining, skins and different stuff will be charged after the fact, but to actually start playing the game, you're good to go for free. No release date has been formally announced yet, and obviously this is inspired a lot by like League of Legends type games. It seemed pretty interesting. I'm glad that with a brand new announcement of this game, they gave us that much gameplay, so they gave us a real look. They really did all the work beforehand and had a full featured product to show us day one, which is really awesome, because I hate when they announce a game and they give us like a little splash screen and then that's all we see for a long time. No, they came out of the gate, gameplay, title, they had different people live playing it, and again it could be like the vertical slice effect, and this game is far from done, but from what it looked like, they had a pretty full featured product here. They're teaming with Tencent here, which is of no surprise. Anybody who's been paying attention to the game industry has seen Tencent just dumping immense money into a lot of Japanese developers and American developers as well. Opinion on that, is mixed. It remains to be seen. Obviously, some people, and I'm going to tread lightly on this subject, obviously some people have some pause regarding Tencent investing money into the game industry because of perhaps their ties to the Chinese government, and some people having issues with that because they see what's happening in the movie industry and sometimes the sports industry that stifles, the creative ability and the free speech of the people who they own for their ability to critique, foreign government. So that is some concerns that some people have with now Pokemon pretty much getting a lot of money from abroad. As of right now, I have no concerns about that, but then again, this is not a game that I intend on playing at in any real capacity, and no real company that I really mess with their games has gotten any Tencent investment, so I don't really have too much of an opinion in that regard. It remains to be seen how this turns out, but I would imagine this, if any kind of, and I hate to simplify it like this, but if any League of Legends clone was going to pop off, it would probably be Pokemon. They got immense amounts of name recognition, a lot of money going into it, so I have high hopes for it. It looks like a pretty fun product, and I'm excited to see how it does. So we have some more Avengers updates, and obviously this is about the Avengers upcoming Crystal Dynamics game, not a movie. We got new details on the upcoming Avengers game. It's coming apparently on September 4th, so that's going to hold down September now pretty much by itself, other than Tony Hawk, with Cyberpunk getting out of the way. We were shown a brand new story trailer showing the game's central villain, Dr. George Tarleton. Tarleton joins the previously announced Taskmaster as another antagonist in the Avengers story. And obviously, anyone who knows about Marvel lore and stuff like that realize that Tarleton is none other than MODOK, or MODOK, for you guys who are wondering about the spelling. And he's working with a group named AIM, or AIM. And we got some new Thor gameplay, a look at the customization, co-op, and then some other details regarding the game too. So far, I think the game looks pretty good. I gotta be completely honest with you guys though. Ever since this game was announced, I've had like a weird feeling about it. Something to me has always felt off, and I think a lot of it stems from just the general character design, where it's like very realistic. And it's a very like grounded, realistic look at Marvel heroes, but it's not the MCU look, and maybe I've just become accustomed to the way that looks. I do read a lot of comics, but I'm mostly a DC guy on the comic end. So I don't know, something about this game looks a little bit off to me. But from what they're showing, the gameplay looks pretty good. It's nothing blowing my mind here. It's nothing that we haven't seen from a third-person action game before. But it looks like they're dropping a product that's going to have quite the legs on it. A lot of content coming to it. They're seemingly going to drop new missions, new heroes, a lot of new customizable stuff. And a lot of it apparently is going to come at no additional cost, which is something I love to hear. I do fully intend on playing this game at launch, so I'll probably give my more detailed thoughts once it's out and I give it a chance and I put hours into it and I really get to experience the product in its full capacity. But for right now, I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say. I like what I'm seeing, but I don't know 100% how the full product's going to ultimately settle. We're starting to get a look at how the narrative all shapes up, but I don't exactly know what they're going for with this game. I don't know if it's going to be a Call of Duty type situation where there is a narrative in story mode in there and a single player component to it, but obviously the multiplayer kind of suite is the bread and butter of the product. I don't know if Avengers is going to be sharing that same kind of trajectory. I'm not sure exactly, but again, we'll see how it comes out, and it's coming pretty close. Only a couple months off, September 4th, and again, now that September is freed up a lot, pretty much right up until next gen, they have the time to really dominate the discussion at that point, because obviously Tony Hawk is going to have its own niche audience. And it's crazy to say that Tony Hawk at this point is appealing to a niche, but it kind of is. It's the more nostalgia people. It's the people again, obviously, who love skating games, myself included. But Avengers is going to have that kind of more mainstream appeal. So we'll see ultimately how that all pans out and how successful this game is. But if I have to guess, coming off of the backs of the MCU, especially with Black Widow coming out maybe, 1 or 2 months after this point, the MCU fervor is going to be right back in full effect. Obviously, with COVID, everything slowed down quite a bit. But with that coming on, things are going to pop off a lot more, and it has a lot of chance to succeed. So I guess we can move on to another story that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about, but I think is actually pretty interesting, which is apparently EA wants to double down on making Star Wars games. So there's always a lot of discourse around EA and Star Wars, and how is Disney feeling about this deal? How does EA feel about this deal? How much of a future does this deal have? And so we got a statement from EA CEO Andrew Wilson, and he's revealed that we're going to double down on that partnership. Wilson explains, Disney continues to be very, very committed to the IP and the canon. He continues and says, we've got new generations of fans coming to the IP all the time. So our expectation is we think that there continues to be a very, really, really strong opportunity in and around that relationship and that IP going forward. So obviously, some time ago, we had Disney. We heard that Disney came forward and was like basically that they're happy with this EA deal, and it seems like EA is actually quite happy with it as well, and are going to continue going right down that rabbit hole. And I'm sure in many ways, Fallen Order really saved their butt on that one. Coming off of Battlefront 2, things were looking pretty bleak, and I think it's important to understand, because some people are like, man, Battlefield 2 was an absolute disaster. Like, how could any major corporation want to continue that deal? That's obviously not working. And I would always challenge that with saying, like, is it not working? Critical success and commercial success don't always line up completely. And as long as Disney's getting that return and the reception is not so bad that it actually hurts, the Star Wars name, which it's definitely not. I mean, obviously, the movies are in a rocky place at times, depending on who you talk to. But I don't think Battlefront hurt the name Star Wars any more than the many other crappy Star Wars games we've gotten throughout the 4 decades this franchise has existed. But yeah, I mean, if they're getting the financial returns, EA's happy with the returns. The games are selling really well. People really like with it. And again, if you're not speaking with your wallet at the time, at the very same time, you're communicating to EA that, hey, we like these games and we want more of these games. So, I mean, I would say it makes all the sense in the world. But I got to be honest with you guys. Like, I'm not particularly enthused by this, and I don't mind if there's a future that includes EA making Star Wars games. My problem is always and has always been the exclusivity aspect of that deal. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they just have a complete monopoly on being able to make Star Wars games, because look at what they've done with the Star Wars license since they've had it. And we've gotten some good stuff and we've got some meh stuff. But okay, so generally speaking, since this EA deal, we've gotten like 4 major Star Wars titles. So we've got Battlefront 1, meh. Battlefront 2, Respawn luckily saved their ass on that one and gave us Fallen Order, great game. And now we're getting Star Wars Squadrons, which the jury's out on. We don't know how that's going to be received or not. But so far it looks pretty cool. But 3 of those titles are kind of the same type of thing, like with Battlefront and Star Wars Squadrons. And it's like, I just think about a future. Like, imagine if EA didn't have this stranglehold over the Star Wars license, and we could have gotten stuff from like Devolver Digital and like Ubisoft and stuff like that, where you could have had such weird experiences. Imagine kind of like a 16-bit indie creates type Star Wars game. How awesome would that be? But we're never going to get experiences like that until EA is not having a full stranglehold over the IP. And again, if I would love a future that EA could make Star Wars games, for decades, but I would love other people to be able to have a shake at it as well, so we can have these unique experiences. And I don't think we're ever going to have truly unique experiences with the Star Wars IP in the game industry until more than one publisher can have a crack at it. And so that's always my issue with it. And of course, EA is going to double down and say, like, we're all in for it, because again, it's a cash cow to them. It's one of the most recognizable IP in the world. So that makes all the sense in the world to me. I just wish Disney would be able to negotiate a way that other people could, give their shot at it too. And again, not everything's going to be a hit. I understand EA fumbled the ball, and if you introduced the IP to other developers, they might fumble the ball at times too. But I would just at least like to see different types of experiences and stuff from the AAA side all the way to smaller, indie type things where they maybe get a crack at it. I really like what Marvel's doing in the game industry, just allowing people. So you'll get like the Ultimate Alliances, you'll get the Spider-Man game, you'll get the Avengers game, you'll get different perspectives from different developers. And at the same time, because Marvel has such a recognizable IP, they're protective of it, so the quality of experiences doesn't diminish necessarily. You maintain that standard of quality that Star Wars would theoretically they want to do, but at the same time give different developers the ability to try things out. So that's my only critique of it, is that I'm tired of the stranglehold, to be honest. So this is a story that I think is super going under the radar, which is Microsoft to permanently close all but 4 physical stores. Now, Microsoft has announced that it will be permanently closing all of its retail stores, while 4 physical locations in London, New York City, Sydney, and Redmond will be reimagined as Microsoft Experience Centers. So let me explain why I think this is important. Now, first off, obviously, it's important to understand and differentiate between Microsoft and like Xbox game studios and stuff like that. Microsoft is obviously this monolith of a company that includes an entire suite of products, Xbox and that kind of whole family being a percentage of it, a portion of it. And most people would, stop at that differentiate and be like, okay, this is a Microsoft story, not an Xbox story, so who cares? Well, I think just like anytime Sony makes a big deal and releases their financials, how that kind of trickles down to PlayStation, obviously that goes down to Microsoft as well. And I think it's a really interesting story, the fact that they're kind of downsizing this much and kind of pivoting their store experiences this much right before a new console launch. I think that's really, really interesting. I don't necessarily correlate this with the quote-unquote lack of success of the Xbox One. They have a whole suite of products. Microsoft is not made or broken by the success of Xbox. in the same way necessarily that Sony is super reliant on the success of the PlayStation. These are two very different companies in very different financial, straits. So I think that's important to differentiate before we get into the specifics of this. But I think this is important to keep an eye out on. Microsoft is obviously making some big moves as a entire company before, and it seems like they're definitely in a kind of a transitionary moment. We'll see if that translates into Xbox and maybe their approach to marketing Xbox products in a physical storefront location also changes with that too as well. This could mean that, like, with them focusing on 4 Microsoft Experience Centers, that Xbox plays an even bigger role in what it means to be Microsoft. Perhaps. This is just speculation on my end. I am by no means a tech wizard or a tech industry expert, but I think it's something at least worth keeping an eye out on. They're obviously making some big moves over there, and it's a very interesting time. I wouldn't be surprised if obviously the coronavirus played some kind of role into this downsizing, where, maybe to just ensure to the shareholders that everything remains in the best financial place possible going into this next generation consoles and next line of products that they're going to be dropping, that they're not just burning money on storefront locations that are not yielding any returns right now, as long as retail is being hit by this virus in its totality. That could very much be the case. So I think it's something to at least keep an eye out on, and that's why I include a lot of these stories. It's not so much trying to read into the meta of every single story, but just get you guys thinking and get you guys keeping your eye out on stories that otherwise I feel like would go under the radar. So I guess we could end with the last story here, or end the story portion of the show, which is the Cyberpunk 2077 Night City Wire. So developer CD Projekt Red has premiered a new live-streamed presentation called Night City Wire that showcased new gameplay and details. We got a look into Cyberpunk 2077's world down to the 7 districts. It's 6 inner city districts and then kind of the 7th surrounding area. The culture and languages, very nuanced, very varied. The braindance mechanic, the Edge Runners anime that is coming to Netflix in 2022. Just a reminder that this game is coming November 19th, 2020, because again, I talked about it last week, but this got punted, 2 months from its original date after getting punted from April to September, now to November. So this presentation was really, really awesome. We got a whole bunch of new details on it. Obviously, they released in the statement last week saying that they're pushing the full retail release of Cyberpunk 2077. However, review copies were going to go out to people. You're going to start seeing reviews coming out. You're going to see more information through the Night City Wire presentations about this game, because the game is, for the most part, content complete. They're just polishing at this point. And if anything, this presentation just reaffirmed what we already knew from CD Projekt Red, that there is a level of care going into this game and a level of detail that few game developers are even exploring. And obviously, we knew this was going to happen the moment we saw Witcher 3 and what they created with that world. The moment they were like, hey, we're making a Cyberpunk game, we already knew what time it was with them, because from that point, they transitioned into a new type of developer where they're just offering these full immersive worlds and a level of depth that very few game developers even remotely offer. This is something obviously on the scale that you see with like Bethesda Game Studios with their Fallout worlds and their Skyrim worlds. So, or Elder Scrolls, my mistake. But yeah, man, I'm really, really excited for this. And with the Edge Runners anime, this is obviously something that they're pivoting a multimedia suite. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if in a year or two you get a movie announcement or something like that. I feel like the future for this is more than a single game. I think this is going to pivot into a million different directions. We're probably going to get sequels off this. We're probably going to obviously get the anime. There's probably going to be a movie. There's probably going to be crazy merch and all different types of things. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this IP pop up with another game developer at some point making a smaller scale experience. I wouldn't be surprised about that. I think we're going to get kind of like this crazy interrelated world coming from this Cyberpunk 2077 universe that CD Projekt Red is creating. And I'm really excited to see what they do with it. I'm so excited about this. This is probably my most excited game that I'm personally for. It's probably like Cyberpunk 2077, Curse of the Moon 2, and Assassin's Creed Valhalla are probably like my major 3 that I'm super over the moon excited for. And so every time we see more and more detail for it, I'm just more and more guaranteed. I got my pre-order in, and I'm excited to see what they got for us. And again, if you haven't seen this presentation, I would highly suggest you go check it out. It's up on YouTube. It's only a little bit above 20-something minutes, so the investment isn't too crazy, but you get to see the level of love they have love and passion they have for this game, which is just a fantastic thing, which makes me feel a lot better with that delay, because again, when a delay happens, it's always a little disconcerting. You're like, oh, come on, I really want to play that game. But it shows that they really love this game, and when they drop this game, they want to make sure that it comes out in the right way, and they don't have to do a million patches to fix the game retroactively that hurt the reception of this game. No, they want to release a full featured product that people get to love for not only the subsequent months, but subsequent years, which I think is a fantastic thing. So yeah, Cyberpunk 2077, Night City Wire, highly suggest you go check that out. So I guess we can go into the last section of the game, and this is typically where I put a game recommendation of the week, which will be here. However, I wanted to make a new segment that kind of melds the closing segment of the show usually, and also the segment that we used to start off the podcast with, which is games I've been playing. I'm gonna have kind of a games I've been playing and games you should check out little segment at the end of every show, just to give us a little bit more to discuss here. So I've been playing 3 things mostly. So let's just start with the Pokemon Sword Isle of Armor DLC. So finally that's out. I picked that up. It's $30 for 2 pieces of DLC, one of which is out now, which is Isle of Armor, and then the Crown Tundra DLC, which is coming out over in December. So you're paying $30, and unfortunately I couldn't find a way to pay for them separately. I would have vastly preferred that if I can pay $15 now and then $15 later on, but that didn't seem to be a selectable option. I went into the eShop, and they only offered the full, expansion pass for $30. So a lot of the question I've seen with a lot of people is this DLC worth it? Now, before I get into that, I want to explain, I have not completed this DLC by any means. I'm probably halfway through with it. I put maybe a couple hours into it. So far, I am enjoying the DLC, but I think it's important to put a couple caveats to understand or explain to people what you're actually getting with this. So if you played Pokemon Sword and Shield and you think it was generally a middling experience and you were hoping for the DLC to be some massive transformative experience for you, to really finally be like, okay, finally, now the game is the full featured experience I wanted, Isle of Armor is definitely not that for you. If you didn't like Pokemon Sword and Shield, I don't think this DLC is going to do too much for you. Crown Tundra can completely change that, and that could be the kind of Frozen Wilds was to Horizon for Pokemon. It could be that. I don't know. But I would say, generally speaking, the Isle of Armor DLC is most literally an expansion. It's giving you more of what you got in Pokemon Sword. So it's offering a new area, it's got new Pokemon available, it's got a new little narrative that they're setting up here, which tone-wise is akin to what you saw in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So it's a light, fun. At times it could be a little fetch questy where it's like, hey, collect, I'm not going to get into the specifics because obviously some people are pretty sensitive about spoilers and want to experience it on their own. So I'll leave that for you. But yeah, it can get a little fetch questy at time. I would say the highlight of this little island that they offer is that there is a bit of environmental and geographic diversity that I think is pretty awesome. They kind of have like a flatlands area, they have a desert, they have some caves, they have heavily wooded forest, they have a mountainous region. So they have some variation there, but I just personally wish that they did a little bit more to differentiate it aesthetically from the rest of the game, to really offer a brand new experience where you walk into it and you're like, whoa, this looks completely different. Because the moment that you walk onto that island, and I'll keep it very light so it's not too spoilery, when you enter those kind of flatlands, when you first enter the island, it looks exactly like the rest of the game. And I understand there's a general aesthetic and graphical, vibe that this game goes for. But I just wish they did a little bit more to differentiate it, where it's like, okay, I'm in a new place. This is a whole new experience that they're offered. They took what they built in Pokemon Sword and just took it to the next level. And I don't think this DLC necessarily takes it to the next level. However, if you're like me and you quite enjoyed Pokemon Sword and you would just like another reason to revisit the game, I think this is more than worth the money. But if you're strapped for cash in any capacity, I say skip this one or wait till you get to a point where you have enough savings or whatever to burn $30 needlessly. But I would say if you're not super invested in Pokemon Sword and Shield and you're not looking for another reason to go back to it, wait for Crown Tundra, see what the reception is for that, and then maybe revisit it at that point and maybe skip over this one. But for me personally, I'm enjoying Isle of Armor the DLC so far. I'm having a good time with it. It's light, it's a fun experience. It gives you another reason to kind of ride around a new environment, catch new Pokemon, battle new things, talk to new characters, and have a little bit of fun with it. So I'm enjoying it as a counter to the second game that I'm about to get into, which is The Last of Us 2. Now, I'm going to be very deliberate with what I say regarding this game because obviously the discourse around this game has been very toxic and very volatile, and so I'm going to be very careful. Now, I'm going to withhold my in-depth thoughts about Last of Us 2 to my dedicated review video that is going to be done the moment that I feel comfortable with the fact that I've completed this game. Now, to start with, I am a little bit over 15 hours into the game at this point, so I would say that generally speaking, I'm probably past the halfway point of the game, but I'm by no means in the last act. So take what I have to say from that perspective. I have not completed the game. I have not gotten the full narrative. I am more than deep into the game, but I haven't completed it. So take what I have to say with a grain of salt if you need to. What I will say regarding Last of Us 2 is I think it's important that we do not necessarily attribute all negative criticism to this game, specifically around the narrative, to incels mad. And I think it's important that we don't attribute all positive opinions and reviews and discourse around this game to, hey, they got paid off by Sony, they're just that SJW woke brigade. I think that those are simplifying a very nuanced product, personally, and I think it's generally non-constructive to have those conversations. I think they took a lot of narrative risks with this game, and they made a lot of choices to play with some really heavy themes that really get you thinking and to break your level of comfort, and this game does this a lot from a narrative perspective. Is just what they set up before and what you became comfortable with before. We are breaking that, and in many ways, to some people, for good reason. They are playing with different ideas and it's risky, but with risk, I think the important for context becomes much more important. And so all I will say with Last of Us 2 is not that it is the best thing that's ever come out or the worst thing that's come out. I'm going to withhold my opinions on the narrative choices they make for my full review. But what I will say is, before you develop a full opinion on the narrative choices that this game makes, I think it's important that you first experience that game in its full context. Because reading down the main story beats on a list of whatever the leaked material that came out will never give you the full picture of what Naughty Dog is trying to do here. And I don't think necessarily that if you experience a full 25-30 hour experience and you come away with it like, I didn't like what they do, that's an invalid opinion. Not at all. I think in many ways this game has a lot to be critiqued for, personally, in some of the choices. And some of the choices they make, with as risky as it is, are going to be polarizing, are going to naturally put people on the fence, where some people love it and some people hate it. And I think are incredibly valid opinions to have. But I think it's important that we understand what was trying to be achieved here, and by no means was this game trying to give you some happy ever after, really satisfying experience. I think this game was meant to play with ideas like perspective and revenge and vengeance and stuff like this that are uncomfortable themes and naturally going to leave people feeling uncomfortable in one way or another. And so I think it's important that you approach the game from that perspective. Generally speaking, from a gameplay perspective, I'm really enjoying this game. I think this is one of the better gameplay experiences I've had probably since Metal Gear Solid 5. Personally, that's just my opinion. From a narrative perspective, there are some decisions they made that I think are more than worth criticism. But yeah, I'll withhold my more in-depth opinions for the full review again. Sorry to be redundant. I'll end off this part of the end of the show with, I'm still playing Orion, Legacy of the Cory O'Dan. Obviously, that was given to me for review. I'm taking my time with this game because this is going to be the first full review I do on this channel, and I want it to be of the highest possible quality, and obviously balancing multiple games at the same time is tough. So I can't give you guys a date on to when specifically this title is coming, but so far I'm really enjoying the game. I'm not super deep into it, but I'm liking what I'm playing so far. So finally, for my game recommendation of the week, I'm going to give you guys this game. So it's Treachery in Beatdown City. Now, a little bit of background on this. This is developed by a developer named New Challenger. It was released back in March 2020, I believe, and it's described on the website as this. Treachery in Beatdown City is a dark comedy action street fighting thriller that gives players the freedom to fight how they want against an increasingly ridiculous cast of enemies. Now, y'all know I have a big love for beat 'em up games. I'm actually playing River City Girls right now as we speak. Streets of Rage 4 was really awesome as well. But my favorite part about this studio who developed the game is the fact that it's founded by a person of color. Now, you guys know I've recently founded my whole new content venture called Players Unified that I've plugged enough times on this show, so I'm not going to bore you guys with that. But a big passion of mine is highlighting people of color in the industry, and this is just another person of color in the industry who I think is making some really awesome moves in the industry. And perhaps at some point in a future episode of Players Unified, I can highlight this team that developed this game in more depth and give you guys a little bit more background at some point, maybe depending on their willingness to show up in that series. But yeah, I picked up a copy yesterday, and so far I'm really enjoying this game. Now, obviously, I have not beat this game yet. I'm not super deep into it, but I played a couple levels, really enjoying it, and highly suggest you guys go check this out. I'm obviously a massive sucker for 8-bit and 16-bit era games, and so getting a look at this game and finding out a little bit of background on the developer, I was like, absolutely, this is a game I have to highlight. So highly suggest you guys go check it out. I bought it on the eShop right now. I believe it's available on Switch and Steam. I bought it on Switch. It's available for $20, and personally, I thought it's more than worth the money. So go check that out if you haven't thus far. But yeah, that's all that I have for the show. A way longer show, and I would say going forward, the show is definitely going to be around this length of time. You're going to get anything anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes of content a week. So I'm kind of upping the NeoVintage news offerings every week, and I hope you guys really enjoy that. And for you guys who made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate you guys sticking with us. And again, obviously there's going to be timestamp down below to any section going forward that you'd like to skip to. So till next time, this is Jabril with NeoVintage Games. Love you guys. Bye.